We've dug less than 1% of Wandlebury in our excavation. We found a pit, and it contained 10 human remains, or 10 individuals, but they could be execution related, or they could be to do with skirmish or battle, to be related to the Viking incursions here. The last year, outside the Hill Fort Monument, we found a burial pit quite close to actually one of the discoveries in the 1970s, which found up to 5 bodies. And these bodies were always assumed to be Iron Age in date. And actually we got them dated recently, and it turned out to be 8th, 9th century CE, so in sort of the Anglo-Saxon period and kind of the Viking-Era. And our trench, we kind of lucked out in a way. We found a pit that's 4 meters long, 1 meters wide, and it contained 10 human remains, or 10 individuals, 4 of which were kind of articulated, and 6 of which, based on the number of skulls we found, were sort of disarticulated, which means the body parts were kind of broken up. And this group of burials, we're not quite sure what they are, but they could be execution related, or they could be to do with skirmish or battle. In the 8th, 9th century also, because we got one of them dated, and it's just absolutely fascinating. And one of the individuals, also particularly interesting from a kind of medical history, it had a big hole in its head, and this is part of the trepanning. So trepanation was the hole in the head to help relieve kind of very stressful headaches and pains in the head. And this particular chap didn't die from this medical procedure, but he was also very, very tall. So he's up to 6'6" in size, and he probably had some sort of growth condition as well, which meant that his bones kept growing even though he was quite young. And they should have stopped, they kept growing, and that's why he's very, very tall. But absolutely fascinating. We're still working out exactly what this is. There'll be more to come on that. We know that Wandlebury continued to have a resonance into the past. Think about Wandlebury as an Iron Age hill fort, but clearly it had a much longer history into other periods, into the Roman period, into the early medieval period, and even into the 18th century, and today, of course. At the time of these burials, the 8th, 9th century, you've got a landscape that is divided into different territories, each with their own kind of administration systems. And it's likely that Wandlebury provided the focus of all those different communities. It's called what we know as a kind of a supra or 100 meeting place. And we know that because it's listed in some of the historical sources from the 10th and 11th century. So it's entirely possible that the excavation has revealed an execution. It makes the execution, though, is very unusual if it is an execution, because usually execution burials at this time are buried individually as individual burial plots. But we've got 10 bodies in the same burial pit. And that's just a bit weird and unique, And not only that, we've also got lots of disarticulated bone as well, which again just makes the picture odd. It's not to say it couldn't happen, it's just an odd context. We don't really have any comparisons for it. It's date dependent, I think. Now, the date at the moment is quite broad, 8th, 9th century. We'll be able to narrow down the dates using some additional C14, so carbon dating the bone. And then we'll be able to narrow down the date into something more manageable. At the moment, it's 100 year, somewhere within the 100 years, and hopefully we'll get it down to maybe 30 or 20 years even. The date matters, and why I'm telling you this is because the date matters. If the date is late 8th, early 9th, then it's more likely to be execution. If it's middle 9th, late 9th century, then it's likely, I think, to be related to the Viking incursions here. And we know what the Vikings, half of the great heathen army, or the Great Army, camped in Cambridge, just outside Cambridge, in 870 or so, over winter. And it's at that point, obviously, that coincides with potentially our burials, if the date is late 9th, which we can then maybe suggest that these are Vikings who've been captured, potentially, executed even, or even the remains of a battle have been buried quickly. And I think that's a possibility, but it really is date dependent. So the date will really help us. We'll do some scientific work. This will be some isotope analysis, but also some DNA work as well. And that will help, again, localize and determine who these individuals were. So yeah, it's a little bit I can't be definitive about it, but there are these two possible options. We've dug probably less than 1% of Wandlebury in our excavation over the last 3 years. So absolutely, I'm sure there's many, many more discoveries to be found and stories to be said.